while I load all this up. Thanks, Melinda, as well. I think I've told you this already, but I have a very vivid memory of getting my mum to laminate that age spread of the Melbourne map when I was in grade 2, and just absolutely loving it. And that's probably one of the key contributors as well, I think, that got me into the profession. So thanks again. Great, here we go. There we go, perfect. Apologies, I'm presenting off a tablet, so hopefully it has enough power to work through this. So for those who don't know me, just while this is loading, for those who don't know me, my name is Adam Mattinson. I'm a spatial data analyst who currently works for a consulting firm, and I dabble in cartography in my spare time. So everything that I do in my work phase went through ANZMapS, which also got me into cartography as well. I never really got into doing spare time cartography to sell anything, but eventually people came and asked if they could buy things. And the reason why you probably haven't heard of me is because I'm very bad at social media and promotion or anything like that. So I got my start outside of university in cartography the usual way, which is being stuck in a Pictorial while my mum goes shopping at Mattinson and SSW and just poring over the pages of the Melway. I absolutely loved looking through the Melway and looking at all these different pages and just sort of imagining how different suburbs looked and all that kind of thing. It just really sort of got me on that path, and also got me into the path of creating my own maps, which leads me on to the next part, which is geofiction. So for those who haven't heard of geofiction, you can probably guess what it is based on the two mashup words that it involves. So it's fiction that's based in geography. So it's making maps that aren't like traditional maps, because unlike traditional maps, they're not used for navigation or informative purposes. And they're basically just created for fun, really. Sometimes I use existing real world elements and just build around that. And sometimes they're built from scratch. So before we get into the big meaty pictorial stuff, I thought I'd just show you some examples of geofiction that I've worked on, which leads to the big one. So build into that crescendo. So on the left, we've got a 2054 Melbourne tram map, which I made, which used the elements of a 1925 planning map for Melbourne. Apologies in advance, this is going to be a very Melbourne and Victorian-centric conversation, but this also goes into, I guess, there's Doctor Strange multiverse of madness at the moment. This is probably the multiverse of mapness. We're getting a glimpse into different versions of Melbourne that could have existed. So the tram map on the left is a version if we made all the proposals from a 1925 proposal. I had to take some liberties in terms of where these routes are going and a numbering scheme as well. And the one on the right is a train map that uses that same principle. And as part of this world building exercise, you'll see the mention of that train network in the tram map and vice versa. So that's one of my favorite things of doing this, is that world building. The next map I want to talk about, and I know there's going to be a bit of lag, so hopefully this catches up, is a map I made after I came back from Tokyo, which is using the existing Tokyo subway map and plonking it down in Melbourne, in a version of Melbourne that has a size and geography that would sustain a subway map of this level. So basically, and whenever I do these maps, they don't just come from drawing lines randomly on a map. It involves a fair bit of planning in terms of locations of post offices and schools and retail precincts and entertainment precincts and all that kind of thing, and then sort of linking them up together and thinking about where people would want to go from one side to the other side, and crisscrossing through the city and crisscrossing through the suburbs and existing infrastructure. So one of the cool things I really loved about this is imagining the above ground world that exists above this Tokyo-sized subway in Melbourne and how that city might look as well. And then sort of building signages around that and building a logo for this new transit system and yeah, all that cool fun stuff. So this is just stuff I do in my spare time, really. Keeps me off the streets. One of the other maps I'm currently working on is an A to Z atlas of regional towns in Victoria and imagining different transport systems in these towns. And here's some examples here. Hopefully it's loaded up. Here we've got the Bendigo London Underground. So based on the Harry Beck, or sorry, the Beck map that was created back in the 50s, I think, or 60s, and sort of applying that same graphical look in a city like Bendigo. I've also imagined Cowes and Western Port as a ferry and tram network, and Dalesford as a member of the LGBTQIA+ community, applying the colours of the pride flag. And because Dalesford's such a safe haven for our community as well, applying that into a fictional light rail network for that town. One other one I wanted to chat about is this Melbourne Ice Age geofiction map as well. One day I was going through a Wikipedia hole and found my way to Yarra River / Birrarung, and having a look at its old alignment from 10,000 years ago, back when we had our last little ice age. And I wanted to imagine a version of Melbourne that existed while that geography was still intact, or how that could have looked if Port Phillip Bay never filled out. And so it's really quite fun. And this is probably what you'd classify as the purest form of geofiction, which you start off with basic geography, which in this case we're using the rivers and creeks, and use that to try and work out where the mountain ranges would be, where the flat areas would be, where farming and forestry industries would have happened, and because of that, where the rail networks would have expanded to, where the road networks would have expanded to, and then building upon that, which areas would have been protected as a national park, where the ports would have been, where the airports, universities, the sewage treatment plants, the tram lines, the bike paths, footy teams, shopping centres, that kind of thing, and then just keep building upon that. This has taken me forever as well to probably get finished in about 10 years time, I think. So now on to the map that Sarah introduced me in terms of one of the big ones that I'm working on at the moment. And to sort of introduce this one, we'll have to rewind back to that car park in Mount Evelyn SSW, the area where I grew up, which is called the Yarra Ranges. It's about 40 kilometres northeast of Melbourne. And if you haven't been there, it's actually quite beautiful. So on the left, we've got a sort of interpretation of Gandalf walking through the Shire. And on the right, we have a picture from Woolwich Lookout in Alinda. And sort of geographically, it's quite similar. And also the way that the Shire is described in the book is sort of like a miniaturized version of the larger world around it. I think it's fairly apt in describing the Shire as well. So we've got the Dandenong Ranges, what by all no means is not like an epic mountain range, but it's still quite beautiful in its way. Got all these little villages that are dotted throughout the Shire, Yarra River winding through it, and a lot of other creeks and rivers. We have caves, we have mines, we have waterfalls, forests, fields, farms, that kind of thing. It's just a really nice place to visit, really. Everyone should get out there, I think. And so with that in mind, I wanted to, and because I was a huge fan, and still am a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings series of books, I wanted to, and such a huge part of that book series as well is the map that exists in those first few pages of the Shire of the book, one of the Shire and one of Middle Earth, all up, and flicking between the pages of the book, between the story and the map, is just such a great visual guide to help understand the story unfolding as well. So initially, I started this map back in 2002 in a Year 12 English class, which of course was completely unrelated to what we were doing in English. And my enter score is a really good sort of example of daydreaming in class. But I was working in this just sort of pen and sort of pencil and paper. And all the other kids in the class are like, "Why are you doing this? What is this? It's amazing." And they're like, "Well, you know, we live in the Shire, so I thought I'd make the Shire map." Just sort of left it, you know, moved houses. That map sort of got buried in all these papers. And in 2017, I saw a sale for a Wacom tablet, which is a sort of graphical tool where it's sort of like an iPad or something like that, but it's a bit more sort of sensitive pressure pen, and a lot of graphic designers use it and that kind of thing. And I thought that might be a great opportunity to get one and do a new version of this map. And so that was the catalyst for, you know, dumping all this money on this tablet. And I thought I'd try it that way because pencil and eraser, as it's sort of amazing it is to use those tools. Um, I knew I would damage it or lose it or something like that, and so I thought it'd be great to have this sort of digital version, and really does feel like using a pencil or paper. So it was great in that regard. And so starting this map just sort of as a weekend kind of thing. I had no idea how large it was going to be or how many hours I would pour into it. And so I just started it in my old hometown of Mount Evelyn. And when I drew in the pub, which is on the corner of York and Swansea Road, that really dictated, for better or worse, the scale or the level of detail that would be included in this map. So eventually, with no idea of how far I would go with this, I just kept, drawing outwards from Mount Evelyn, and I just found myself in rhythms, just getting into a rhythm and just keep drawing and drawing and drawing. And at some point, I had to sort of internalize and think about how big this map was going to be and when I would stop. And I just thought, well, may as well make it the Shire of Yarra Ranges, because just basically the naming. So there's the Shire that exists in the books. There's the Shire of Yarra Ranges. It made sense. So that's what I did, and I found out just a couple of days ago that the dimensions of Yarra Ranges is 2,447 kilometers squared, which is roughly the size of Luxembourg. So I think if I knew that information 4 years ago, that I would be essentially making a Tolkien map of Luxembourg, I probably would have thought about doing a smaller version or sort of reining in the level of detail. So as I kept drawing in, the level of detail also expanded as well. So I'll get into that a bit more detail. But in terms of creating the map, it's all geographically accurate. So it was using snippets of aerial imagery, always as well for finding locations as well for different things, using heritage data and speaking to a lot of people that work for historical society as well to find out where these old sawmills were mining operations happened. And weirdly, this map is sort of a combination of historical map and Tolkien mythology. So this really is a form of geofiction, and the geography is real, but it represents a world that doesn't quite exist. But the level of detail is meant to inspire a sort of idea that a world like this could exist. Also used ecological vegetation class from pre-European settlement to work out where different swamps and different types of ecological vegetation existed. And also using the Victorian history and register to see names of old houses and sort of these old sort of big tourist mansions that existed in the Dandenong Ranges and Yarra Valley as well. So in terms of the drawing of all these sort of pictorial symbols and that kind of thing, I really just sort of used similar things that existed in that Tolkien map and just sort of turned it up a bit. So with all the farms, the type of fruits they produce are drawn on that map, like cherries, strawberries, stone fruit, even eggs as well. The wineries as well, the symbol I use for that is based off the pre-amalgamation Shire of Willowdale emblem, which included that grape symbol you see there too. Town halls, I wanted to have something like a sort of Rohan kind of thing sitting on a mountain. So a lot of the town halls look like that, and a lot of historical houses as well are shown on there with property names. Old mines as well, the hills as well. I sort of experimented with different shading and weirs and creeks and all those sort of hydrological things. I was really, really grateful that there's an area in Warburton that has a cave, because then we can have, a bit of cave troll action in there too. And then adding some mythology. So really building upon that sort of Tolkien thing and then planting it into real life. So all the mines I've given Dwarvish names as well. So using the Dwarvish language, and the area around Hillsville and out towards Marysville, which if anyone's seen or gone through Black Spur, which has the world's largest flowering trees through there, you really sort of can picture sort of like a Lothlorien or Rivendell kind of situation happening there. So I've used a lot of sort of Elvish text, and man, that is the funnest thing to write down on like a pad or a piece of paper, just the curves. It's incredible. Yeah, so also the symbology as you get more towards these elvish places changes from houses to these sort of more elvish looking structures. And even the train line that goes through Emerald, which is Puffing Billy, it's been changed from a train to a dragon. So I've managed to have a lot of fun with this map. This is all done in my spare time, and I do get a lot of questions about would I ever do different areas as well, and different sort of local government areas, and I would probably have to live to about 450 to cover all of Victoria at the same scale, because this is all just done in my spare time. And just for some of the map nerds out there, the technical elements, they're just huge. So this actual map that I do online, on using the graphic package, it uses up so much space, and the dimensions for the map itself, once it's printed out, or currently this version you see on your left, it's about 2 meters by 1.5 meters in scale, so it's a huge thing. I've converted it into a puzzle as well, which is very hard even for someone.
We've just lost your sound, Adam. Unfortunately, we've lost Adam's sound. Oh, there you are, Adam.
Hi, so I'm at the last 5 seconds. So I just wanted to say, so about 75% done of the map, and just a few things. So that's sort of the next stages that I'm working on, is finishing off that last 25%. That last 25% of the Shire is all forest and about 3 little towns. So there's not far to go, and just working on a whole bunch of other stuff as well. As I mentioned, I'm really bad at promotion, but if you Google my name, which is Adam Mattinson, you'll find all my Instagrams and Facebooks and all that kind of thing. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Adam. It was great to hear about, I suppose, a definition of geofiction, and how the accurate geography fuses with the mythical landscape of Tolkien. We'll now go to